Lesson 12, the eternal dreamer of Eck. Another Eckist, Eckankar practitioner, saw itself cross-legged on a cliff with Harold Klemp above a whirlpool fed by an ocean. An Eckankar he is. This is the 10th plane, our 9th heaven. A Namilak, having no name sphere. The eternal dreamer is told to go on from this place where Hugh bounces off the whirlpool, because Paul Twitchell's spiritual notebook lists a 10th heaven, 11th heaven, Akshar, imperishable realization, and many planes beyond the physical, and 12th heavens. Eckankar is not the path to achieve and maintain bliss. A person is to go on working with projections as a member. Could this dream be about being the sort of spiritual that leaves a person detached from the reality outside spiritual practices, pretending that one's guru is present? And some people spend, I remember the talk in almost awe of this person who, for years, they've been spending, your actual standard for groups like this, instead of like 20 minutes or half an hour or 5 minutes or something, the spiritual practices, they would spend hours with it, 2-3 hours a day. Dreams uplift consciousness when they are used in the connection with outer life. There are more connections with Sigmund, or what we seek, than love are. There should be more possible relationships of value than that. The first Eckankar initiation is the dream initiation. Can't one desire for God's sake without that? Inner growth brings changes. Debbie felt her attacks were ease for days. Her hurrying didn't leave her the free time she thought she'd have, because she was stalled at the busy bank. She realized she was in the presence of many brilliant souls. The next day, she saw a truck that lost a hold of its load. And on the way home, she thought mention of that on a radio show meant Harold Klemp lightened her spiritual burden. She re-examined as much of her life as she could think of to make this thought seem literally true to her. Then she started to hear harsh ringing she interpreted as warnings about her speech. Did she have an enlightenment based on a forgotten dream, or was it what they call religious mental illness? A spiritual view of romantic dreams is just putting a spiritual connection to it. They may not indicate who a person's soulmate is, nor does it have to reveal something about a person's love life. It may actually be entirely about the parts of the psyche. Jessica dreamt of cleaning a staircase and the upper floors of a building with a number of apartments. She communicated telepathically with the man there that thought she had to meet him. They worked together for days until they were almost finished, and he wanted to talk. If the cleaning was spiritual purification, she might have been getting a message about how she shouldn't let guys touch her till it was for a higher spiritual purpose. Or, according to spiritually valid terms, right? Her shame at worrying about her parents knowing would make sense if she was raised with a Bible that left in the parts about not touching the opposite sex outside of marriage. Although most people don't seem to be aware of that, even if they read the Bible a bunch of times. But awakening of soul is supposed to happen when people are as adapt to dreams and visions as they are waking in life. Sue saw her experiences as too profound to share. When not in the normal state of consciousness, she reminisced about her worldly existence. When she was not in dream or soul travel, she would get nostalgic about her dreams and visions. The Temple of Eck in Chanhassen, Minnesota, recently had its 25th anniversary. Now there are several more official Eckankar temples that serve as a physically sacred place, based on the overall thought, words, and deeds of humanity. The order of most sacred are first Mecca, then Medinat an-Nabi, Jerusalem, and Damascus. His revelation and experience and inspiration to God's prophets, the main decider of which sites are most sacred? Or do New Age temples that people try to dream about create an even more important middle ground of spiritual homes on earth? Many heavens. See is what most religious, observant, or spiritual, but not religious people believe. It is true that people who aren't religious tend not to have it stratified, I guess. I messed up with that sentence, sorry. Because I should have edited. It is true that people outside of Eckankar tend not to have precise definitions of the afterlife and usually don't believe that you can go to the same places at will. Eckankar tries to leave a person with a sense of the far country or other worlds that treats them as more privileged than the experts of other faiths. Achila, Eckankar initiate, had chest pains that led to a discovery of clots. They couldn't get to them, so he was hospitalized till he had a heart attack. Achila had an out-of-body experience during one of the most painful moments. He thought the spiritual leader of Eckankar told him it was heaven and he could stay there. Was this a heaven, or was it a projection of the teaching that the current head of Eckankar will meet them in the physical, astral, causal, mental, etheric, and soul planes, in accordance with their initiation level at death? Is imagining oneself there and hoping to dream about them really practice for the afterlife? The central role dreams play in the life of the Sinoe of the Malay Peninsula may explain their lacking in physical and emotional problems, but that doesn't mean that science doesn't have the same sort they do for dream interpretation and treating all those who seem harmful as enemies. Is that Sinoe, and is it Malay? I think it's Malay, so Sinoe. The Dream Master is what the leader of Eckankar is called, and is not recognized as such till people get convinced somehow that the one they call Mahanta or Way Show gives them dreams instead of another being or process. A couple sports commentators used to heavily criticize quarterbacks in football till one of them dreamt he was a quarterback and realized it might be a difficult job. There is no sign he had credited Eckankar or its leader. But should we trust Harold Klemp's taking credit for it? The key to spiritual rebirth is to continue the creative process, knowing that death will occur. Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces talks about how psychoanalysis, the modern science of reading dreams, could give a person the detachment and transforming ability to not see death as a state of limbo. Is the dream path causes better for most, or is Eckankar's way of reliance on projections of an inner master who lives in a physical body better? Some would say modern psychiatry and Eckankar are not the best paths to wisdom, power, freedom, and divine love. You are an eternal dreamer, but not a child of God. It is true that experiences are spiritual occurrences that souls go through. Everything may be spiritual, but that doesn't mean we automatically treat it as such. Harold Klemp is right on page 288 of the Ek Dream 2 Discourses that many Eckists, Eckankar members, don't want to serve life, but we should want to serve light, life, love. Well, light, love, and life. LVX. Lux Etheros. Lucifer. R. I bring the light. Is, what we become. It is a name and formula to practice in surrender. Islama in Arabic is to surrender, to submit to God. As one puts your false egos aside and struggles in God's way. Jihadin fisabilillah is the Arabic phrase for that. A dream journal is a way to give yourself insight into yourself over time. Your secret experiences are worth keeping a record of. A higher initiate prefaced his entries by proclaiming how real his dreams were. He used to dream about things for himself and now tends to dream about serving others. Eckankar doesn't quite accept the reality of the scientifically verifiable world, but it teaches there is a truth behind it, that it can help someone with self-mastery. How is it becoming one's own person if we have to constantly look for the secret guidance of a Mahata or exalted personality without peer? Aren't our senses our physical, emotions or astral, memories are causal, thoughts are mental, and intuition are etheric? Our own layers to instruct ourselves with? The aforementioned high initiate dreamt that the temple of Ek, Holy Spirit, God's verb, Eckankar, as its leader, possibly the definition of the term Ek here, held a dinner with an empty chair open for Jesus and an empty chair for its so-called living Eckmaster. Does that mean that he knows that godlike claims of the spiritual leader of Eckankar are just as empty as claims like that about Jesus? Does it indicate that Eckankar is going to be a major religion and works with others? Huge